So I want to make sure everybody has an agenda along with the questionnaire sheet. Does everybody have one? All right. So let's get started this morning. First off, I want to say thank you so much for everybody who came this morning for this evaluation workshop. It's the first time that Mosier Community has done something like this, as far as I know. John, are you aware of anything that has happened like this here at this club?
Nothing quite like this.
Okay. Well, did you notice how he said quite like this?
We've done all evaluation meetings and some different things,
right.
but nothing with this.
This intent.
Type of,
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, and I also want to thank so much Israel and Kanal for volunteering at my request to come and be our expert evaluators. We have some evaluators in this club that are really good at what they do. They set great role models for all of us to learn how to do evaluations better. And I'm glad that they have agreed to do this. It is great that we have these. And so if you'll take a look at your agenda, we're going to have them go back and forth, and we're going to talk about the 4 objectives from the Competent Communication Manual that all the rest of your speeches are really built upon. And those 4 are organize your speech, get to the point, how to say it, and your body speaks. Everything after that really gets layered on top of those 4 project objective skills. So they're going to talk about the skills, they're going to talk a little bit about how to evaluate those, and it'll be good learning for us, good education for us. On the back of your agenda, you'll find notes for each one of these. So be free to take notes on what these gentlemen have to say. And you will notice that on 4 of these, there are underlined in yellow one of the objectives. So I'd like to say, who has objective organize your speech underlined in yellow? Great. Who has get to the point underlined in yellow? No? Someone will have to find one. Who has how to say it underlined in yellow? No? Okay, who has your body speaks underlined in yellow? Han. Okay, so the other 2 are going to have to be located because we're going to need those at the end of the meeting. So we might have to do some swapping around of agendas to make sure that somebody has it underlined. With that, I'm going to start by asking Kanal if he will come up, or no, excuse me, who starts first? Israel, I'm sorry, Israel.
Yeah.
You're a great looking Kanal.
Oh, nice.
Okay, so I'm going to ask Israel if he'll come up then and speak about the first project, which is organize your speech. Israel, would you please? Thank you.
One of the first things that you need to know about giving an evaluation is more important to focus on the construction and the mechanics than the content of a speech. The construction and mechanics will carry over no matter what speech you're doing and will be more beneficial to the audience at large. Content specific to a speech focuses on the individual who is speaking. So bear that in mind. For organize your speech, the objectives are select an appropriate outline which allows listeners to easily follow and understand your speech. For this, you're looking for intro, body, conclusion, the standard parts of a speech. You want to make sure that all those 3 things are there and that they flow from one to another. Make your message clear with supporting material directly contributing to that message. You want to make sure that the speaker is always keeping on topic and calling back to ideas they've previously talked about. Use appropriate transitions when moving from one idea to another. Now this is the key part. Signposting. Letting your audience know, today I'm going to talk about 3 things. Here's the first thing I'm going to talk about. Then let's talk about this. And lastly, let's talk about this. And in the conclusion, calling back to those 3 things. And then create a strong opening and conclusion. That's your intro and the end of your speech. Because you want to capture the audience's attention, and then you want to finish by reiterating everything you said. So these are the things you're looking for as an evaluator to make sure the speaker is putting all these pieces in place. Thanks.
Kunal, would you speak about project number 3?
Sure, certainly.
Thank you.
And Israel, do you mind if I borrow your? The objectives for project number 3 get to the point. To select a speech topic and determine its general and specific objectives. This is very important. One thing I'd like to mention at the outset is to actually read the explanation of the objectives in the manual, because the manual actually goes through a lot of details in what it asks the speaker to do and what it asks the evaluator to do. The general and specific objectives, or the general and specific purposes of the speech, should be stated and apparent within the first few seconds that the speaker starts speaking. And those objectives or the purposes should be reiterated at specific points in the speech, including at the end where they are restated for emphasis. Organize the speech in a manner that best achieves those purposes. Again, this is the organization of the speech, the introduction, the body, the narration, the conclusion, which summarizes the key points, the key objectives, the key purposes of the speech. This is one of those projects that gives you a sort of an implicit license to critique the content of the speech. So you can use that to say whether or not the speaker delved into sufficient detail on one or other aspects of the speech in order to bring out the general or the specific purposes of the speech. And project sincerity and conviction. This is important because any fidgeting or such gestures where the speaker appears to be evasive or unsure, slouching, undermines the credibility of the speech and takes away from the truthfulness, the sincerity that he or she wishes to project. Thank you.
And Israel, would you please speak now to project number 4? I'll see it.
So for how to say, you're looking for word choice and word usage. To say the sun was shining, or to say the sun was a beautiful golden color, or to say the sun was exuding hydrogen. Those are all 3 ways of saying the sun was shining. You're looking for the second one, because the objectives are to use rhetorical devices, eliminate jargon, and use the right words in sentence structure. So you want to note good uses of language, colorful uses of language, but using words that don't go too far outside the general scope of your audience. These are the things that you're looking for when you're looking to see what words people are using to develop their speeches and what you want to critique them on.
And finally, Kunal with project number 5. Your body speaks.
Project 5 is Your Body Speaks. The objectives: to use stance, movement, gestures, facial expressions, and eye contact to express your message and achieve your speech's purpose. I think the most important one of these, I have always thought, is eye contact. Because with eye contact, you have the opportunity, the speaker has the opportunity to make a point, look into the eyes of the audience, finish a thought, underscore something that he or she wants to say. Look for that gesture of confident, persistent eye contact over a few words or closure of a sentence. You have to also watch for gestures that are saying something different than the speaker is communicating. In other words, if the actions speak louder than words and the actions are contradicting the words, then that's a problem. So watch very carefully and listen to make sure that the gestures are in correspondence with the words. So for instance, if the speaker is supposed to relate an inspiring story of heroism, triumph, you want expressions that project that triumphant stance. You don't want the speaker to go back, step back, look down, and so on. Make your body language smooth and natural. So this is very important. You don't want this to become a performance. This is a speech. You're speaking. And gestures should flow smoothly, organically. They should not be over the top or artificial, contrived. Remember that these should be things that support the speech. They shouldn't be unnatural affectations that sort of distract you from the message. So also look for the smoothness and the organic, natural, smooth flow of gestures. Thank you.
Okay, Israel, if you'd stand here, please, I'd like to ask you guys a couple of questions, just in wrapping this up. Would either one of you or both of you like to talk about what techniques you use mentally as you prepare for an evaluation? You learn ahead of time that your speaker is going to be speaking from Project X. And so what do you do in order to prepare ahead of time to give the best evaluation possible? And how do you manage sitting in the audience listening to a great speech without being drawn into the content and not the objectives? And Israel, I'll ask you if you'd speak first, and then Kunal, just answer that question for us, because that's a tricky thing to do, and yet both of you, gentlemen, do that well. So, Israel.
As Teresa said, trying to not be drawn into the speech is the hardest part of being an evaluator, in my opinion, because you want to hear a speech. That's what we're here to do. But your role as an evaluator is to focus on what this person is saying, how they're saying, how they're communicating. So for me, when I hear a speech, I'm looking at those mechanics and the structure of what they're saying. That is my primary focus. That is what I keep in the back of my head to keep me on task while everybody else hears just the speech.
Thank you, Israel. Kunal?
To prepare for the evaluation of a particular speech, I read the manual carefully, look over previous speeches that I have given or others have given on that particular project, and look at the very last page in the manual for each project gives a guideline for evaluators on what to focus on. That's very helpful to me. In terms of being distracted by the content and the keeping in mind the objectives for evaluation, I mean, that goes with the territory. That's what we're required to do, wear two hats. Listen to the content and also evaluate it, critique it, listen to it with this evaluator's hat on your head. So, thank you.
Okay. And you guys can have a seat now, and I'll move these chairs back. Later on at the end, thanks, John. At the end of the meeting, have an opportunity to ask questions and interact with these gentlemen. I'll ask them to come back up on stage, and we'll just ask questions and hear what they have to say in this more intimate kind of a setting, so that we have the freedom and we'll have the time. Now, if you'll take a look at your agenda again, now comes the time for a speech, a 5-minute speech. I'm going to give a 5-minute speech, and I believe I titled it, It's Time for an Infomercial. I presented this a few years ago, and this is kind of a revival or a redo of that speech. Now, I'd like to ask again, who has the agendas that are underlined with an objective? Who has them? All right. I'd like to look around and find the other 2 agendas that are underlined, please, if you could, and hand them out. John, is there an agenda next to you? There should be an agenda with each one of the objectives underlined. Mary Alice doesn't have one? No? Okay, well, what I'm going to do then is I'm just going to assign the ones that are
And
missing.
everybody flipped over their sheet, because I noticed a few people looking at this side, but not,
Flip it over where you wrote your notes. Okay, I'll assign them then.
nobody's got, okay.
So what I'd like you to do is pay very close attention to my speech, and boy, did these guys ever set the bar high for what you need to be watching. But according to what they talked about, critique my speech, and then at the end of my speech, you'll find out how you're going to participate. Sally.
Are you asking the people who have the yellow highlight to specifically, like in my case,
Yes.
see your organization?
Yes.
How does your organization
Yes,
go?
thank
Okay.
you, thank you. And the other person that has highlighted, she is, who is it? Is it Han? Are you the one, and what do you have highlighted?
How to say, or sorry, no, how you're, let your body speak.
All right, and the other 2 then are how to say it and organize. So nobody has organize? All right, I would like then to have, Carmen, would you please particularly watch for organization? And the other one is get to the point, is that correct?
I have organized your.
Oh, you
speech.
have organized, I'm sorry, okay. And what's the other one, Han, what do you have?
Your body speaks.
Body speaks, okay, so then I would like, if you would do,
Four is what you're looking for.
pardon me, get to the point?
Yep.
And Rizwan, if you would do how to say it, okay? That would be great, all right. So, welcome everybody to Mosier Community Toastmasters. Soon, very soon, this club is going to have an event that we haven't had in years. Well, at least 2. How many people in this room have been to a 360-degree evaluation meeting right here in this very room? I have. Am I the only one? Wow, great. I'm going to tell you today what a 360-degree evaluation is, because soon, very soon, we're going to have one right here in this very room. I believe the date has been set for October 1st. So what's a 360-degree evaluation? Meaning, it's where 4 aspects of a speech are critiqued by 4 different people. 1 speaker, 4 evaluators. What a blast! As an evaluator, you only have to focus on one thing that speaker does. Just one. One of you will organize on, or will get to evaluate, organize your speech. Someone else will get to organize, let me get my pieces, get to the point. Another will evaluate how to say it, and the 4th will evaluate your body speaks. That's what you're going to do this morning for me. So how does a 360-degree evaluation meeting work? You'll find out soon, because Steve will be presenting an agenda that will need to be filled out. It'll need at least 4 speakers. 4 speakers that morning will provide a 5 to 7 minute speech. And then underneath that name of that speaker who has signed up will be 4 places for you to put your name in any one of those. And those 4 lines will be for organization, how to say it, get to the point, or body language. You will have an opportunity to evaluate that speaker for one of those things. And as the meeting goes through, the first speaker will come up, give their presentation like I am. 1 minute of silence will follow while you quickly make your notes, and then the first evaluator will come up for a short mini evaluation, which is what you'll get to do this morning for me. a 2-minute evaluation on that particular objective, you'll have the opportunity to come up and tell everyone, how did that speaker do? How did that speaker do in organizing their speech, in how to say it, their body language, getting to the point. And then, once the 4 evaluators are done, they'll take their seats. The second speaker will come and will do the exact same thing again, a 5 to 7 minute speech, and then a 1 minute of silence to organize your thoughts. And then the individual evaluators will come up. It's a great format. You're only going to be up here for 2 minutes. Your focus is specific. You don't have to try to remember what exactly you're going to focus on. You know what you're going to focus on. And you get 2 minutes to tell how that speaker did with that specific objective. 360-degree evaluation meetings are fun. They're fast. They're furious. One of the funnest things about a 360-degree evaluation is the chair that will be placed at the back of the room. Because one of the objectives will be vocal variety. That's the speech that's written for the ears, not for the eye like gestures are, but for the ears. That chair in the back of the room is turned backwards. So the person evaluating vocal variety doesn't even get to see the speech. All they get to do is hear it and then come up and tell, how did that come to the ear? How did you perceive it? When they said what they said, was it word images that you got? Did your mind explode with imagery? The 360-degree evaluation meeting is coming to our club in just a couple of weeks. Having gone through this little workshop today, hopefully you will all be encouraged to sign up for one of those evaluations on any of those 4 speakers or all of those 4 speakers. Give it a hand. Try organization on one. Try how to say it on another. Try vocal variety on one. Sign up for those roles. It's a fast, fun meeting. It's totally different than what you expect. And I hope you enjoy it. The 360-degree evaluation meeting coming soon to Mosier Community Toastmasters. There you go. So now, I would like to, oh, no, I'm going to give you 1 minute of silence. So you can gather your wits about you. Gather your thoughts. Are you ready? Got about 10 more seconds. All righty. So I'm going to ask you to come up in the order that Israel and Kunal spoke about giving evaluations. You're only going to be asked to give 2 minutes, roughly, focused on that specific objective. Organize, how to say it, body language, and the one I always forget, get to the point. The one I always forget, get to the point. Who knew that? Try to give the best evaluation you can on that specific objective. And then when we're done with these evaluations, I'm going to ask Kunal and Israel to come back up on stage and talk a little bit about how you did as an evaluator. Talk about what you could have done better, what you did really well. These are just little increments of evaluations, skills that will help you provide an evaluation that will benefit any speaker, anytime, no matter if that speaker's been in Toastmasters for 100 years and you've only been here for 2 weeks. It won't matter. These are skills that you'll gain and be able to give a speaker a good evaluation for. So I'd like to ask the person who has organized your speech, and that would be Sally, if you'll come up and give us a rough 2-minute evaluation for how well my speech was organized. Thank you.
Teresa's speech was on something I had never heard of, but I like the concept, 365-degree speech, not having to do with she gets to turn around so much as the 4 points that we're looking for, how did they do in each of those 4 quadrants? I purposely did not watch her body language because for me I would have gone to the place that I really shouldn't have been, which was, did I like her storytelling? Did I like how she did it? I wanted to hear her facts. I wanted to hear her content, which is what we were asked. Israel asked us to, where'd you go? Asked us to do, was listen for content, not for the storytelling, not for the fact, how their unique speech worked. And as long as Teresa's been here, this wasn't Teresa's strongest speech. I did not hear the steps. I didn't follow the story very well. And I kept going, no, this is not you dozing off because it's way too early on a Saturday. It was about, did she step through? She did tell us in the beginning what she was looking for, but I was still pretty far along before I realized 365 had nothing to do with her body. It had to do with the quadrants. But she got there, and she did tell us sequences and steps, and we're going to do this, and here's how you can help. In the middle, the peanut butter in the middle of that sandwich was very tasty. She did close the door at the end, sort of, kind of, very gently, not as strongly. I would have loved to have had her come back around and tell us, this is what you heard, this is what's going to happen. I liked her cheerful voice. It was very salesmanly-like, and I was interested, so I wasn't bored by it. But it wasn't her strongest speech.
Thank you. Perfect. And now, get to the point. Who has get to the point? That would be Carmen. Thank you, Carmen. There you go.
In starting the evaluation, I have to look for the criteria for the project number 3, right? Okay. If we evaluate the speech from the point of view of get to the point, I would say that Teresa's speech has a very good introduction and a good structure with introduction, body, and conclusion. The message was clear and fluent with appropriate transitions and a good key point. No use of the notes, it's a plus. The fluctuation in the voice, also a plus for this stage of the project. I would give above average of the speaker's experience level, which is number 4 grade. And I guess all the purposes were met. Anything that the speaker could have done differently, anytime is room for a better speech. I'm sure next time it's room for improvement in everybody. And what I like about presentation, the flow, everything. The flow, the intonation, the voice, the message given. I think the speech was complete.
Thank you. And now, how to say it? Thank you.
So when we look at how to say it, we're looking at 3 different objectives. The first objective is sentence structure and communicating ideas clearly, accurately, and vividly. I'm going to talk about that first. So when Teresa got up, she got started, and I felt that she did not start off as clearly as she could have, and I felt that halfway through the speech, she was pulling us back in and re-explaining some things, which could have been done better. Even though at the end of it all, she got the point across. She repeated it, she made sure everyone was absolutely clear, she made sure we all got the format right. Like I had a big question in my mind, as in, will one evaluator come up and evaluate all four at the same time at the end of the speech? And she kind of answered that, but the clarity could have been built in from the get-go instead of improv clarity halfway through. Was she vivid? Yes, she was vivid by the end of the speech. But it was a build-up, it was a gradual build-up. And the second objective was use rhetorical devices to enhance and emphasize ideas. Saw a little bit of that, but I didn't really feel any specific rhetoric devices. And eliminate jargon and unnecessary words, sure, yeah, I'll give her that. She did not use any jargon and did not use unnecessary words. And of course, her grammar was perfect. So that's my evaluation.
And last but not least, your body speaks. Han.
Good morning, everyone. Teresa's speech. It's infomercial time. And the objective of her speech is to use stance, movement, gesture, facial expression to express her message and achieve the speech objective. Make the body language smooth and natural, and did she achieve all these objectives? Absolutely. From my perspective, just evaluating on the speech, Teresa has consistently been strong with her use of body language, and she's genuine. It comes across. It doesn't matter if it's 7 a.m. or I like how she grabs the audience with her excitement. 4 speakers, right? 4 projects, and the place cards that she went through was quite effective for me. And she had consistent eye contact. Looking, as an example, at one point she pointed at Kathleen and made an emphasize, I forget what she was, made an emphasis on the statement, and went, oh, okay, wow, I'm buying into this. So it's quite fitting to the title. I think initially where she spent a lot of time doing body gesture. What I liked was in the middle of her speech, she did a 360 turn. What I would like to add is perhaps do another twirl for the audience to conclude it. And primarily, Teresa, you stood here, you looked at the audience from here to here. What I would suggest is, use more of the emphasis, eye contact, this side of the audience, another side of the audience, to get the buy-in, especially when you're trying to get people to sign up for the workshop, right? Sorry, this is a workshop, but the deal, October 1st. And perhaps maybe wrap it in, because we're kind of doing the 360 now, like this is what we're doing versus like, oh, this is the future. But hey, this is kind of like a test, but that's all I have. Thank you so much for
Now, before I ask the gentleman to come back on the stage, let me just say this. That was an almost impromptu speech. And I was fretting terribly about not being able to give a good speech, because I like to give good speeches. But as I sat there, I thought I couldn't have done it any better, because it did provide everyone who gave me an evaluation on those specifics to really give me a good evaluation. Thank you. So I'd like to ask Azrael and Kanal if they'll come back up on stage right here and speak to us a little bit now about what they saw from each one of these evaluators. Gentlemen, and I will ask, walking backwards, you're never supposed to turn your back.
Don't fall down the stairs, please.
No, if I would have spun the other way, I would have probably fallen over. So I'd like to start with, you guys, you can sit down or stand up, it doesn't matter either way. But if you would now begin, by the organizer's speech, if you would speak to Sally a little bit about how she did what you, suggestions, what good, evaluate Sally a little bit. And during this time now that we're moving into, this is that conversational time. So if Kunal or Israel say something about someone and you want to interject and ask a question about it because you noticed it too or whatever, you know, raise your hand and let them call on you. I don't want it to just be a free-for-all so we don't learn anything. So let them call on you. But if you gentlemen would like to start then to organize your speech with Sally.
Sure. Sally, you started off by talking about content, but you moved right into noticing that there was a lack of signposting. And you described how that made you feel, which connected with the audience. You pointed out that as she got past her intro, you sort of lost track of what was being said. And you gave her some good advice on how to clean that up and how to make that more approachable as she was going along. So if she gives the speech again, it'll make it a little easier for that audience to follow. I thought you pointed that out really well. As far as suggestions for improvement, you did talk a lot about content of the speech rather than the construction of it. And when you're looking at organize, you're looking at construction. So that's something to work on, is to focus on how do they construct the speech? How do they make it? You know, what are they lacking in their outline of the speech? If you were just to strip everything else away and bring it down to bullet points, is there anything they're missing? So that would be something to focus on. But you also talked a lot about your impressions, which is a good way to connect with who you're talking to.
Good, thank you. Kunal, do you have anything to add to that? I know that wasn't your specific objective, but do you have anything to add?
No.
Anybody have any questions about, or Sally, would you like to respond?
No, I think he did a good evaluation of my evaluation of you. It was gentle, it was nice. It specifically told me where my strengths and weaknesses were.
So for the rest of you who took notes on Organize Your Speech, was there anything that stood out to you that you gained from her evaluation of me, his evaluation of her, and what you could take away from Organize Your Speech objectives? Is there anything anybody would like to add to what they gained?
Like things that are small, compact, and quick. And my notation under Project 2 is organization, line, content. So basically saying, look for, and that's what he said about my evaluation, is don't necessarily at this point look at their storytelling. Do they have that story organized? And that's a different look for me.
Great. Okay, next. Kunal, or get to the point?
Get to the point, Carmen. One thing that Carmen did well, and she always does well, is to repeat the objectives and go to the objective evaluation one by one, going from the list of objectives and the evaluation points at the back of the manual. Now there's two suggestions for improvement for Carmen. One is to speak up a little bit. I had a very hard time hearing what she was saying, and so I missed some of the statements or suggestions that she was making. The second suggestion on the topic of get to the point, it always helps if the speaker uses a catchphrase that encapsulates the point and then repeats the catchphrase at the end of the speech to underscore the point. And that wasn't done very well in this speech. Something that I would suggest Carmen look for when she evaluates get to the point speeches. Thank you.
Anybody have anything to add or a question to ask about get to the point? Carmen, do you have anything to say to Kunal?
Thank you for feedback. Yes, it helps me a lot.
One thing I'd like to point out about Carmen's evaluation is she does the sandwich method really well. She starts out by highlighting and putting a positive spin on what took place, and then she moves into gentle critiques, and then she wraps up with something she really likes about the speaker. And that's a good way to give an evaluation.
Okay, how to say it is written.
Sure. First one, you started out, as Kunal pointed out with Carmen, giving the objectives, and that's really important to reiterate what you were looking for as an evaluator so that the audience can come along with you. It's almost like an introduction to a speech, as it should be. You are introducing what you are about to talk about through the objective reiteration. And one thing that I saw, and I pay close attention to this, is alliteration. It's a rhetorical device. It's in your manual along with simile, metaphor, and triads. But alliteration is a very powerful way of driving a message home. And what she used was fast, focused, and fun. And that's something that as an evaluator, you want to be on the lookout for those things to point out as you're giving an evaluation so that the other members of the audience will think, yeah, when I give a speech, when I construct it, I want to put those pieces into my speech. You have a very positive attitude when you're up here giving a speech, and you speak from a position of authority. You're very confident in what you say, and that's an important aspect to an evaluation, is to, even if you don't feel it, you want to project that to other people so that they'll listen to what you're saying and take those words to heart.
Rizzo, do you want to respond to?
I'm good. Thank
You
you.
good?
Yeah.
Anybody else about how to say it? Any
One-
questions?
One suggestion, this speech, this objective, how to say it, cried out for a powerful metaphor that sort of underscored the content of the speech. You know, so you could have used something like 1 pitcher and 4 catchers, or something like that. Would have helped.
Oh, well said. Okay. And where are we now? Body speaks, body language, the body speaks.
Yes, body speaks. Han, again, repeated the objectives, went through each one, gave very good suggestions about not feeling like Teresa was able to emphasize certain points enough at the beginning and the end. That was all very well done. Now, one thing I noticed about Teresa's speech is what I call BP and AP, before the place cards and after the place cards. Before the place cards, she had a lot of bubbly energy, enthusiasm. You could feel it. After the setting back the place cards on their position, somehow that her energy level was depleted, as if the act of going through the place cards and explaining them, you know, sort of robbed her of whatever energy she had. And so I noticed a significant drop off in their energy level as she was describing and presenting. It's something that you might have noticed, or a suggestion for you to try and notice energy level differences through the course of the speech.
Interesting. Han, the feedback there about body language and what Kunal said?
The BP and AP.
That's interesting, isn't it? That's really interesting. Do you?
Yeah, I didn't notice that. I thought there was a lot of energy at first, in the middle, but toward the end. But perhaps that's where maybe we're in agreement there. Yeah. That there was more consistent energy. I don't know.
Kunal, do you think that that's something that people, that other speakers go through when they have visual aids? Have you noticed that before with other speakers? That's an interesting thing.
Not necessarily visual aids, but I think that this was just some kind of a distraction. It sort of broke up the rhythm of your speech. And then suddenly, right after you placed them on this
on the shelf, I could notice a drop off in your energy level.
So I'm also wondering too, sorry.
Oh, no.
I think on this infomercial, you had, perhaps the vocal variety was, I think it was like, oh, very jazzy at first, but then it was consistently like steady. And perhaps another perspective would be from, as an audience, you feel like, oh, okay. You could be too meek, I don't know. I think maybe that's the NDP too, it's kind of lose focus, but as an audience. Interesting.
Good observation.
Yeah.
So I have an observation, more a question here. With regard to like the best practices of evaluating, so I've often noticed when people are evaluating, they're frantically making notes because they have to come up with these points to evaluate against, and they're afraid they don't want to miss important things. And while they're making notes, their attention is obviously distracted, so they're probably missing out on stuff. A speech is not a class, right? You don't have that time to make notes.
Right.
So what suggestions do you guys have to sort of not miss anything and still do a great evaluation?
Well, the first thing I'll say to that is it's okay to miss things. It is absolutely acceptable and almost expected that you can't cover everything. And everybody is going to see the speech and pick up on different parts. So your job as an evaluator is to give your particular take on what you've seen and what you've heard. So just make bullet points, and if something goes by, it goes by.
But wouldn't that make it very subjective?
It is. There is no way to give a completely objective evaluation, because your personal experiences are always going to play a part in how you view a speech, how you listen to a speech.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, just be okay with that.
I'll say you get better with experience. This is something that you just have to learn to multitask. As you do more and more evaluations, you'll learn what to look for, what to watch for, what to write down, and so on. Your first evaluation is not going to be as good as your 100th evaluation.
Anybody else? Okay, so I'm going to ask you guys each 2 questions. First, what was your first evaluation experience like? And now that you've been giving evaluations, how was the confidence built to give them well? Israel, what was your first evaluation like?
Terrifying.
Everybody get that? Terrifying?
Is a
Terrifying?
word that I would use. Because it is as important as giving a speech. It is very similar to being on stage and giving a speech. You are up here, you're speaking to an audience, you have to craft something intelligible in a very short amount of time, especially if you're the 3rd evaluator. You don't have a whole lot of time to come up with what you want to say and be able to walk up here and speak to that. So it's very difficult at first and very nerve-wracking, but over time you find a style. You figure out what you look for and how you say things, and as Kunal said, with experience you just sort of fall into those patterns.
Kunal?
I was also intimidated by the prospect of my first evaluation, but I'll just echo what Israel said and make one point that I've learned a lot from other expert evaluators, people like John, Bill Burns, and I have gained a lot of good advice from them. That has helped me.
Great. Well, thank you. Thank you both.
Lisa,
Oh, was that
Han may have to say.
Pardon me?
Han may have
Oh,
to say.
Han, go ahead, go ahead, go ahead.
Do you want to go first?
Well,
Go ahead.
I'd like to suggest something for this particular club, and that is, one thing I see on my computer come Wednesday and Thursday is the panic call for volunteers. One way we can alleviate some of the pressure of I'm having to evaluate while listening to the speech is if I am volunteering to speak, it is my responsibility to find my evaluator. That we are partners for two reasons. One, if I tell my evaluator on Saturday, will you evaluate me next week? That person has time to go through my manual site and figure out what they're supposed to look for. When I've been more than once to evaluate, handed the book 5 minutes before the meeting starts. I gotta figure out what the goals of that speech or refresh my memory and then evaluate them at the same time. So can we start partnering? Those are 3 less positions that we have to get volunteers for. It's my responsibility to find that person.
Well, I tell you what, Sally, we have an officers meeting after club today, and we'll bring that up. Israel and Mary Alice there, so let's bring that up. That's an interesting
Because
suggestion.
then there isn't the panic
That's a
of,
real interesting suggestion.
there are 2 panics that go on. One is, oh my God, I've got to evaluate them and I don't remember what I'm supposed to look for as evaluator. And the other is, it's my responsibility as speaker to find Israel and say, can you evaluate me next week? And then he has a chance to look through the book and say, oh, I got to look for these things in her speech.
That's a really interesting suggestion. That's really interesting. We'll bring that up at the officers meeting and hammer that out a little bit and get back with you about that idea. That's really interesting.
Because I know when the mention of the what do we look for while we're listening for the speech, I'm thinking, yeah, and I've also got to get into the book.
Oh, sure.
But if I've got a week to, or even a couple days, it's like, oh, okay.
Well, it should be on the Easy Speak website when people sign up, so at least then you have some way to know who your speaker is, and the Toastmaster let you know who it is, and that, so there is already some form to that, but that's an interesting suggestion. Han, what were you going to say?
Oh, so my question is on the sandwich approach, this workshop. So there's also a school of thought that says, no, you should use the sandwich approach. Especially, you could come across being genuine, or if you're having to evaluate an employee, they may just like, oh, everything's fine, but they don't really get, your critique is right in the middle and it gets lost. Have you experienced like the sandwich approach backfire, or what other evaluation approach or method would be fitting? I guess case by case, what are other methods that might be an alternative to that we use that a lot?
Yeah, I don't think I have experienced a sandwich method backfire, but on the other hand, whether it is doing evaluations here or evaluations at work, I take time to make sure I'm very clear in the message I'm sending so that it is crisp, clear, and easily understood. So even if the criticism is in the middle, it doesn't get lost or gets misinterpreted. One other thing I've done is give a scale. I've developed my own patented evaluator rating scale, which I use sometimes to grade people on different aspects of the speech.
Okay.
I know that for me, giving an evaluation is different than up on stage, is different than when I'm talking to somebody one-on-one. The sandwich method when we're up on stage is highly directed towards the audience at large. Even if the individual speaker does not pick up on all your critiques, because they may have their own ideas of what they said, somebody else in the audience may hear those critiques outside of the praise, so the middle section, and be able to improve themselves on that alone. So it's good the sandwich method is good when you're sort of indirectly addressing who spoke, because you want to deliver that message to them easily, but it's also speaking to the audience at large.
So, Ezra, your evaluation, and I learned it by watching you over and over, is how slowly you speak. It is not a boredom, it's not a, oh God, I could take a nap between each sentence. I've learned that when you evaluate somebody and you quickly scoop up, you do this, you did this, really fast, the person stops hearing. When you do an evaluation, there is enough time for you to say something, to get from you to me, and you to say the next thing, and I haven't built any barriers of being overwhelmed by it. You say it very gently, you say it at enough of a pace that I hear it. Sometimes it stings, sometimes it's, he's so very wrong, but I've got enough time in my brain to process that. And that's what makes you a good evaluator, is you may say a few items, fewer items than somebody else, but you say them in such a way that I may not even hear them right now. Later today I may go, oh, you know, he was right. But it's also the pacing. A good evaluator, both of you, pace it and don't try to get as much as can in as much in that evaluation time. So
Well, thank you. Our role as evaluators is to be educational. You want to teach what your opinion was, what you saw to the best of your ability, but you want to teach the audience to be better. And in order to do that, you have to take
when you
the time.
use the word teach, what I hear is, I want to get as much into your brain as I possibly can because I am a wise person. Both you and Kanal bring a few words up, lay them on the table, and let the person hear them in whatever way and whenever they want to hear them. But there are so few words that it comes to you when it comes to you. And it's very nice.
Well, I'm glad you enjoyed that.
Our time is up.
Okay, get the room change.
I want to thank Kanal and Israel for being our expert evaluators for this workshop. And I also have 5, if anybody would like them, effective evaluation little things from Toastmasters International. You're happy to take, I'm happy to give you one. You can take one, I'll just leave them up here. You can come and get it if you'd like. And also there was a little questionnaire, just a couple of questions about this little workshop. It was our first one. Hopefully we'll be able to put on more. Write down what you thought about it, answer those questions, and get them back to me. I'd appreciate that. And thank you all for coming.
And thank Teresa for setting all this up.
Yes, well, great, we'll do more. As if we want, if we get some feedback, we'll do more. Yay, thank you all. Questions in your discussion was great.